Director Scott Eisberg joins us tonight from Columbia. He has the very latest. Scotty.
Hey, good evening, Dean and Victoria. A lot of wait and anticipation from Gamecock fans. Social media was just blowing up the last couple days. It had been almost 2 months since Steve Spurrier had walked away from the job. Ray Tanner was exhaustive in his search for a new head coach. And today, they introduced him. Here's Tanner walking out with President Harris Pastides and Will Muschamp, the new head coach of the Gamecocks. As for Muschamp, he is a defensive genius type guy known for defense. He says he'll work primarily on defense and recruiting here. He'll certainly hire good people to work with the offense. As for being here, Muschamp says he was courted by several other schools. This, the only one that he pursued.
It didn't take long. This is where I wanted to be, and I made that very evident in the interview process as we continued to move into the wee hours of the night. And I could see Charles was getting a little tired, and I figured he was wanting to go to bed. But I made it very clear that this is where I wanted to be.
As for Muschamp, very accommodating with the media. He sat down and did one-on-ones with several stations. We were one of them. That full one-on-one interview with Will Muschamp coming up in the 5:30 half hour. For now, live in Columbia, Scott Eisberg, Sports 4.
Scotty, thank you. New at 5, Santee Cooper customers will see her.
For Director Scott Eisberg sat down with Will Muschamp.
We are now joined one-on-one by the new head coach of the Gamecocks, the 34th head coach. What does it feel like? Do you kind of look around Williams-Brice Stadium and say, I'm the new head coach, Will Muschamp?
No, I'm the new head coach and needs to go recruiting. That's what I plan on doing this afternoon once I get done with this interview.
Obviously, following Steve Spurrier has got to be an interesting thing. What's it like for you to follow Steve Spurrier?
Totally embrace it. He's a Hall of Fame coach, a Hall of Fame person, and a Hall of Fame player. And there's only one Steve Spurrier out there, and it's certainly a guy that has raised the level of this program, raised the expectation level, and we certainly appreciate of everything he's done.
Obviously, you're a defensive, gritty guy. Is that what you plan on bringing here to Columbia? And what's your plan for the offense? Obviously, not something that you're overly hands-on, but you said earlier today you'd like to have some hands in it.
Well, there's no question that philosophically to be on the same page, but we want to be fast and physical in what we do. We want to snap the ball quickly and have some tempo with what we do and how we do it, and I think it's going to be a great product on the field, and I think our players are going to have a great time playing.
I thought it was interesting you brought up Connor Shaw earlier, unprompted. Talk about what he kind of embraced as far as being a Gamecock and what you saw on the field when you coached against him when you were at Florida.
He's a winner, and that's the bottom line. He's a guy that his football team won a bunch of games when he was taking the snaps, and regardless of his talent level, how he threw it, how he ran, whatever, the guy was a winner, and he positively affected everybody around him.
Obviously, recruiting in-state's going to be a big deal. You said it right off the bat. I got to recruit in-state and win the state. Talk about doing that. What are your plans for getting into these high schools and talking to these kids and getting them here to Columbia?
Well, I know a lot of high school coaches in the state, but it's more than anything recruiting's relationships and building relationships with people, and for coaches to understand and for families to understand when their young man comes to the University of South Carolina, they're going to have a great experience.
Surprised it happened this quickly to be a head coach again, or not surprised?
Well, I've been in this profession a long time. You never know what's going to happen. If you do things the right way, if you represent universities the right way, if you do a great job with the job that you have, opportunities will present themselves. And that's the way I've always kind of looked at things, and the opportunity presented itself here.
Final question. Ever visited Charleston? Ever visited the Low Country before?
I've been in the Low Country recruiting a little bit, but I haven't enjoyed it as much maybe as I'd like to, but I certainly will.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Coach. Good luck here in Columbia. That is the 34th head coach of the Gamecocks, Will Muschamp.
I think he did a number of those one-on-one interviews, and you could just tell he really would have rather been
Somewhere else?
like recruiting.
Yeah.
Like recruiting.
I think it's interesting, another University of Florida, former, there's a tie.
Absolutely, and I think Steve Spurrier had a big hand in this decision, but he was there at Florida for 4 years. He had success his first 2. He struggled his last 2. They got rid of him. Do you learn more the second go-round as a head coach?
Well, they say you learn from your mistakes, correct? It's the only way you can learn.
Correct. Defensively, he's a genius.
Yeah.
Offensively,
genius?
They've got to get something going. Yeah. And the thing that you're going to love about him, he's a maniac on the sidelines.
Oh, I love that.
Goes crazy.
Yeah, that's always good. Entertainment.
Captain Boom.
For those of us who don't usually watch a whole lot of sports, but we like the other attractions, yeah.
Yeah. So
all right,
good luck
deal.
to them.
Let's talk about local news. Our top local stories at this hour, getting ready for Donald Trump's rally at Patriots Point. The Republican presidential hopeful.
Right now with Sports Director Scott Eisberg. Guys?
Hey, good evening, Dean. You almost forgot me there, but we caught you. We're good to go. Will Muschamp introduced today here in Columbia. It was an interesting day, Darren, because so much talk on social media how long South Carolina waited to hire this guy. They did wait almost 60 days, but Ray Tanner says he got his guy.
My favorite line from Ray Tanner on that was, "I'm hiring a coach that hopefully stays for at least a decade, hopefully more. Can I have a few more hours?" And President Pastides said, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Will Muschamp comes in certainly as a defensive guy, no doubt about that. And the snarl he has on the sideline, that is something you don't want to be standing in front of. But as for Will Muschamp, he really is a guy that can recruit. That's the big thing for South Carolina. This guy is a recruiter.
According to 247sports.com, his worst recruiting class, 11th. That's pretty good. South Carolina could use some new players. Overall, it seems like it's about the fit for Will Muschamp at South Carolina.
I had some other schools reach out as a possible head coaching situation that I didn't pursue, quite frankly. And so I just didn't feel like they were a good fit for me and my family. This certainly was the perfect fit for us and what we wanted to do, and that's why we pursued it.
I coached for a long time. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect scenario, but it's about the other things that count. Winning games we all like, but the relationship that you have with your players, the impressions that you make upon them, you help them develop as young men, great athletes, if they can do it while they're playing for you. But there's a lot of things that are important, and that's what Will Muschamp stands for.
So Ray Tanner certainly took a while to court Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp now will have to go out and find players and find them quick. He was on the recruiting trail today, and he had a great line about his recruiting prowess. He showed his very attractive wife, and he said, "Look at me. Look at her. If I could recruit her, I could sell ice to an Eskimo." And that certainly says his confidence in his recruiting abilities is fairly high, Darren.
Yeah, and for Clemson, we are talking about the #1 team in the country. Now, the upstate team, they don't have to sell ice to Eskimos. Deshaun Watson, the program's first ever Heisman Trophy candidate finalist. He's going to be one of 3 guys in New York City next Saturday with a chance to bring home that big trophy.
And as for the Clemson Tigers, Will Muschamp not willing to talk about them today. I threw out the question, did not get much of an answer about Clemson, so we'll see how that rivalry game goes next year. But more importantly for Muschamp is recruiting against the Clemson Tigers now.
All right, for Scott Eisberg, I'm Darren Stoltzfus. That'll do it for now, live in Columbia. Let's send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, guys, thanks very much.
All right, we're going to go right now to the USS Yorktown, where presidential candidate Donald Trump is speaking right now.
That if you're a successful person, especially if you're very successful, you've done a lot of things, a lot of deals, a lot of everything, you can't run for president. And yet that's the kind of mindset and thinking this country needs. We're being run by people that don't know what they're doing.